There's a clip from Hot Ones that basically explains this whole story on its own. Will Arnett is sitting across from the host, eating wings that get spicier by the minute, and the conversation drifts to a burger called the Big Harv. Arnett lights up instantly. He calls it the Cadillac of cheeseburgers, talks about the way the patty gets grilled, the sliced pickles, the whole experience, like he's talking about a childhood memory instead of a fast food order. That clip blew up across Canadian media so hard that the company's own chief operating officer came out and publicly thanked him for it. And it's not the only pop culture moment either. Even How I Met Your Mother threw in a joke about Robin collecting Harvey's trays, those classic orange trays everyone who has eaten there knows by heart, followed by a bit about road tripping down the Trans Canada Highway and stopping in for a burger between two towns nobody outside Canada has ever heard of. When a Hollywood actor and an American sitcom are both casually referencing a regional burger chain, like it's a national landmark, that tells you something strange is going on. Because here's the part that doesn't make sense on paper: every major fast food brand on the planet is obsessed with scale. McDonald's and Burger King are in almost every country you can name, built entirely around standardization and speed. The same fries, the same burger, the same experience whether you're in Tokyo or Toronto. Harvey's has never played that game. They sit at under 300 locations, completely boxed in by these American giants, and they have never seriously pushed across the border into the biggest, richest fast food market in the world, sitting right next to them. That's not an accident. That's a choice they've made over and over again for more than 60 years. And once you understand why, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. It goes back to 1959 when two guys, Rick and George Sakanik, wanted in on the fast food explosion happening across North America at the time. Their first pick for a name was Humphreys, inspired by an American chain called Henry's Hamburgers that was doing well at the time. That idea got scrapped completely because of a classified ad in the Toronto Telegram. A car dealership called John Harvey Motors was shutting down and liquidating everything, including a massive lit up sign that just read Harvey's. Buying a used sign was way cheaper than commissioning a new one, so they grabbed it on the spot, dropped Humphreys entirely, and put that sign up outside their very first location. On April 1st, 1959, they bought a 10-acre lot at the corner of Yonge Street and Observatory Lane in Richmond Hill, Ontario, land that used to house a Dairy Queen that had gone bankrupt because business only picked up in the summer. They fully expected the same fate, bracing themselves to shut down every winter just to stay afloat. That never happened. People kept showing up no matter the season, and the location was profitable year round almost immediately. What made it work wasn't luck, it was three specific decisions nobody else in Canadian fast food was making at the time. The first was about money. Cash going missing was a constant headache in the early fast food industry, so Harvey's had customers pay right at the register the moment they ordered, before the food was even cooked, and handed them a receipt on the spot. That kept the cash locked down and away from the chaos near the grills. The second was the fries. While most drive ins were serving cheap frozen fries of unknown origin, Harvey's sourced fresh potatoes straight from Prince Edward Island and had every location wash, cut, and fry them right there in the kitchen, producing a thick, skin on fry that stood out immediately. New management eventually phased that out about a decade later in favor of cheaper frozen fries, but in 1959, those fresh cut fries were a massive draw. The third decision is the one that actually built the entire personality of the brand. After paying, customers walked down the counter with their receipt and watched their burger being built right in front of them through the glass, calling out exactly what they wanted added: no filter, no limit. That single decision completely flips the fast food playbook on its head. Chains like McDonald's and Burger King built their empires around identical mass produced burgers, moving as fast as physically possible. Harvey's deliberately slowed that whole process down at the topping counter just to hand control back to the customer. To make that work without collapsing during a lunch rush, they kept the base menu extremely simple: just a beef patty veggie burger or chicken wrap, plus a few hot premium add ons like cheese or bacon. Everything else happened at the glass. The counter itself is basically an assembly line of choices: starting with lettuce, onion, tomato, and pickles. Then moving into the more adventurous stuff like black olives, cucumbers, jalapenos, and specialty sauces, including chipotle, ghost pepper, and their own secret Harvey sauce. That level of personal control created a kind of loyalty most fast food chains never get close to. People genuinely argue online about their perfect build decades later. And former employees have talked about running what felt like mountains of pickles through slicers just to keep up with lunch rush demand. Some regulars order a mountain of extra pickles just to build their own makeshift salad right on the paper tray. Harvey's leaned into that obsession instead of fighting it, eventually creating frings, half fries, and half onion rings in the same container, specifically so people didn't have to choose between the two. It sounds like a small thing, but it says everything about how this company operates. Give people control and they'll stay attached for life. That loyalty through the 60s and 70s is exactly what caught the attention of some serious money. One of the founders, Rick, had actually already built a successful full service rotisserie chicken restaurant called Swiss Chalet 5 years before Harvey's even existed. So the two brands grew up together as sister companies under a parent organization called Food Corp, led by President Bernie Sirion, who aggressively expanded both chains across the country. The real turning point came in 1979 when a hospitality conglomerate called Cara Operations bought the entire company, taking on both Harvey's and Swiss Chalet in one move. Cara would later rebrand into what's known today as Recipe Unlimited, eventually adding chains like Kelsey's and Montana's to the same portfolio. Suddenly, Harvey's had real corporate money behind it for the first time, and what they did with that money is where this story gets genuinely interesting because it's about to lead into partnerships, a health crisis, a burger arms race, and a fight for Western Canada that this brand did not win everywhere. That's where the second half picks up. Once Harvey's had proper corporate backing behind it in the 80s and 90s, the company started experimenting in ways that shaped the brand for decades. In the early 90s, they struck a deal to bring Church's Chicken directly into their restaurants, giving customers a whole new fried chicken option under the same roof. It worked for a while and brought in a completely different crowd, but once that partnership ended, Harvey's didn't look outside for a replacement, they looked at their own family. Since Swiss Chalet was already a corporate sibling, they swapped the Church's counters out for Swiss Chalet Express counters instead. That single move accidentally created one of the best food hacks in Canadian fast food history because customers realized they could order a Harvey's burger combo and just ask for Swiss Chalet's dipping sauce on the side. And some employees started openly telling regulars to swap their regular poutine gravy for that chalet sauce instead. Two separate Canadian brands, one order, one tray. They also got creative with real estate during this stretch, opening small kiosk locations directly inside Home Depot stores across the country, usually parked right beside a second cup coffee counter, giving contractors and weekend renovators a quick, familiar lunch without ever needing to leave the store. It's a genuinely clever way to grab foot traffic without building a full standalone restaurant. But none of that made the American giants back off, so Harvey's kept the flagship burger evolving constantly just to stay relevant. They rolled out the Super Burger in 1989, replaced it with the thicker steak like Ultra Burger in 1996, followed that with the Big H in the early 2000s, and then the Great Canadian Burger about a decade after that. It's basically been a nonstop arms race with itself for over 30 years. Then, in October 2008, the company hit a genuine crisis. An E. coli outbreak linked to contaminated onions struck a location in North Bay, Ontario, infecting over 200 people and triggering a class action lawsuit against the corporate office. The eventual settlement paid victims anywhere from $1,000 to over $7,000 each, and it forced a complete overhaul of their supply chain safety protocols behind the scenes. Once that legal storm passed, they jumped right back into competing, launching the Great Canadian Burger in 2010. But consumer habits were shifting toward healthier eating across the entire industry. So in November 2012, they introduced a health check approved section of the menu, giving health conscious customers a veggie burger, a grilled chicken sandwich, a smaller burger called the Lil Original, and a grilled chicken salad, all built around a restricted list of approved toppings to keep the nutrition numbers in check. Then right back to beef. When McDonald's brought premium Angus burgers into Canada, Harvey's answered in 2014 with their own Angus lineup and made a hard public commitment to source exclusively Canadian beef for every one of those patties. Home turf ingredients for a home turf burger. On the complete opposite end, they built out a whole poutine menu too, starting with the classic fries, curds, and gravy combo, and eventually expanding into loaded bowls piled with bacon, buffalo chicken, and crispy jalapenos. I've watched a handful of fast food reviewers try that jalapeno version, and the reaction is almost always the same. The ghost pepper sauce on top of the gravy tends to feel a little unnecessary and overly creamy, but the crispy jalapenos themselves consistently get called the actual star of the dish. Crunchy, seeded, properly breaded, and honestly good enough that people wish it was a permanent item instead of a limited time offer. Some of those same reviewers have been pretty blunt that the plain patty on its own is kind of forgettable, more filler than flavor, and that the entire experience really lives or dies on how many toppings you're willing to pile on. I actually agree with that take. The meat was never the point here. The point was always control. Even with all that menu innovation, Western Canada turned into a real problem. British Columbia, in particular, was brutal to crack. Harvey's managed a handful of locations out there up until 2019, and a lot of those were actually the small Home Depot kiosks rather than full standalone restaurants. The core issue was that White Spot and their fast food arm had already spent decades locking down deep loyalty with West Coast customers. And on top of that, Vancouver real estate costs made building and maintaining full sized restaurants financially brutal while also fighting for new customers in an already saturated market. Recipe Unlimited eventually made the call to quietly shut down every remaining BC operation by the end of 2019 and pulled out of the province completely. They didn't give up on the West entirely, though, they just got smarter about it. Instead of fighting for expensive new land, they looked at what they already owned and started converting existing standalone Swiss chalet locations in Calgary into dual branded combo stores, effectively doubling their active store count in that market without spending a dollar on new land. Seeing how well that worked, they rolled the same strategy out to Red Deer and Edmonton. Through all of this, the one advantage the American chains could never copy was pure Canadian identity. And Harvey's leaned into that hard precisely because they never crossed the border, letting their marketing go fully local without worrying about an international audience. That connection hit a real high point in 2024 during their 65th anniversary when they hid 1,650 free burger cards at landmarks across the country. Four of them golden tickets worth an entire year of free food, alongside a run of limited edition customizable merchandise, letting fans design their own shirts the same way they design their own burgers. Looking forward, the company has set a genuinely ambitious target of 500 active locations over the next 5 to 10 years, focused heavily on the greater Toronto area, Montreal, and a renewed push back into Calgary. Since building massive standalone restaurants keeps getting harder, they're exploring gas station kiosks and food court counters instead, alongside digital ordering kiosks being tested in dining rooms to speed up the lunch rush. They've also completed renovations on roughly 85% of their existing restaurants. And they clearly keep an eye on what fans are doing online, since a viral internet combo eventually became an official limited time item, pickle poutine, which is exactly the kind of thing this brand would do. At the end of the day, Harvey's never needed the rest of the world. They built an entire empire on one simple idea: hand the customer the counter and let them build the thing themselves. And after 6 decades of pickle mountains, secret sauce swaps, and people arguing online about their perfect combo, the trust has clearly paid off. I'll take the topping counter over a drive through speaker any day.